All right, all right. Welcome, So You Think You're Fine, peeps, to another exciting episode. As usual, your host, Artemis and Bethany. We have a really cool guest with us today. Let's do a little intro on him, Emmis.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have one of my very, very good friends, Ryan. I usually call him Wags, so we go by Wags. I've known Ryan for a really, really long time, and we were obviously, him and I always go back and forth, Beth, about like hot topics in United States.
We need that.
Sometimes we just go off the rails with conspiracy theories and guns and, our favorite thing, which is mortgages. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yeah, that's usually a pretty close list of the topics for us. So,
how did you guys meet?
So Emmis and I were both at a previous lender, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And had worked together. She was more obviously on the refi side. I was always on the purchase side. But then when we were both in leadership together, we got paired on the same leadership team. And that's where it really, we had known each other before that, Emmis, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's really where it had, we got to spend a lot more time together in work. And as directors at this previous employment, we there was no lack of stress or situations where we found each other, as a confidant a lot of times, and just kind of popping things off of each other. Hey, I need to vent real quick. I need to pick your brain about something, that sort of thing. So that's where I would definitely say that the more of the closer side of Emmis and my relationship came from.
Awesome.
Yeah. We had some fun stories, especially when you guys as purchase decided to take some hot refi loans and, the process of it.
It was terrible.
Yeah, pretty much. And Wags would be like, "Can you fix this loan?" And I'd be like, "Just send it to me. 2 seconds. Fix it. There you go. Have it back."
You're like, say less. I got you.
Say less.
Well, awesome. And a little bit more, too, in your personal life, Ryan. You're a father. Is that correct?
Yes, I've got 3 little kids. I've got, so our son is 10. His name is Rhodes. Our first daughter is 8. Her name is Charleston. And then our youngest is Merrick, and she's 6.
Oh, I love that. And which one calls you the governor again?
Well, all of them now. But,
all of them, okay.
Merrick was the one that started it.
Yeah. So I just want to make it very clear, I am the governor. And when, Ryan and Sarah, when they're planning on purchasing land, they're going to name it. They're going to just say they're signed by the governor.
I love that.
That was the plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Allowed by the governor.
Allowed by the governor,
Yeah.
which is me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. Well, that's awesome. And you are married. Is that correct, Ryan, as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So my wife and I, Sarah, we've been married 11 years, been together about 13 total.
Awesome. All right. What's the secret sauce, if any? I'm sure there's not.
I don't 100% know yet. It's hard. I'll be the first one to tell you. Marriage is hard. It is easy in such a wide variety of ways when you've picked the right person. I truly believe that. Majority of our life and majority of our interactions in day to day are very easy. They don't feel forced. I'm blessed in the fact that her and I seem to have made a great decision with each other. But man, nobody prepares you for just life challenges and what changes once you have kids, and when life gives you a really bad situation, when there's, a death in the family, when there's financial troubles, when I work 80 hours a week, there's all those things aren't really talked or thought about when you're in those early honeymoon stages of dating. And quite honestly, I don't really think there's a way to prepare for it. You can talk about, your thoughts on different things and have that good communication beforehand, but you don't a lot of times see that person and how they react to things until, the event actually occurs. And that's when I think the two of you need to realize you're always on the same side.
Yeah.
You've just got to figure out a way through it together, whatever that might be. So
a
lot of communication.
That's powerful. And the way you described it is awesome. I definitely agree. I think not a lot of people take in consideration what it entails. And I think having a great partner, which it sounds like Sarah is, that's crucial to a good relationship.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about the dynamic. Emmis told me a little bit that you guys are homeschooling the kids. Is that correct? How's that? What made you guys decide to make that decision?
So when we were, when Rhodes obviously being our youngest, when we were first in Arizona with him, Sarah was homeschooled probably about half to 2/3 of her early age.
Okay.
And then she ended up going to high school at a private Catholic school in Iowa.
Oh, nice.
And she always loved both sides of it. She loved that, she had a homeschool experience when she was younger. She loved going to high school when she was older. And I was always a public school kid. I born in Iowa, public school, never really thought twice about it, And so our son originally went to a preschool at a private Catholic school in Scottsdale, goodness. And we had a good experience. We really did. Like he enjoyed it. We had a good experience with it. We loved the teachers. We loved the school. And then as they got older, they went to a different Catholic school it would have been Phoenix at the time, but closer to like Ahwatukee area. And everything was going great. We had no plans of homeschool. And then COVID had hit. And with that, one of the big concerns, right? I don't want to put my tinfoil hat on too early, but one of it was, we had done the last, 4 or 5 weeks of the previous school year with the masking and Rhodes trying to be in kindergarten learning from home on a Zoom call. And
that sounds wild itself. Yeah.
I mean, put a kid on a Zoom call in kindergarten and put him in a room and say, hey, pay attention to your teacher on Zoom. And it went about like what you would think, and we said, this is wild. We said, we're paying a good chunk of money in tuition for our kid, and we're not going to learn via Zoom. It just doesn't make sense for his age group.
Yeah. And
so when the next year came around, the next school year, we said, hey, what's going on? Are we going to do the Zoom thing? Are we going to be back in person? And of course, so many things were so up in the air at that point with everybody.
Yeah, everything.
And they said, no. They said, we're going to be back, right? We're going to be back on campus. They said, you know what? We've listened to the parents. We've talked to all the parents. If kids want to wear masks, wear them. If they don't. Like, pretty much whatever your choice is. And we said, we love that. We love that. Absolutely. Each parent makes their own decision for their kid. Great.
Yeah.
So we signed them up. They had record enrollment. And we show up the first day with all the other parents and all the kids. And people are excited to be back. They as excited as you can be about school, I guess, when you're a kid. But our daughter was starting, and things of that nature. Our youngest was starting at that time. She was excited. And a couple days in, we then got a note home. And the note home said, hey, we're actually, we're going to change our policy. All kids need to be masked.
Oh, wow.
All kids need to be 6 feet apart. All kids need to, basically everything that they said they weren't going to do. And I didn't really take kindly to that. To each their own as far as how they wanted to handle COVID, right?
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to get into that side of things, but the one thing that we really liked was we were told as parents we would have a choice over our children.
Yeah.
And 3 days into the school year, that obviously had changed. And the word on the street was that a wealthy donor to the school, whose kids didn't go to the school even yet, they weren't old enough, they were just basically getting a spot saved in line for them, had put up a very, very hefty donation and said, I want masks and I want social distancing and I want it to be the way that I expect it to be done. And, the indication was that their donation was pending on that. And so we met with the principal and I said, listen, I really feel like we've been bait and switched here.
Yeah, literally.
I said, I don't like it. I said, and whether it's true or not, I said, the rumors of other parents and this wealthy donor are swirling. And I said, I think that's a really bad look.
Indeed.
And, I told my wife, I said, I can't in good conscience. And she was on the same path. She's, how do we raise our children to stand up for things? How do we raise our children to, actually do what they believe in and do what they say? And then we said, we're not going back to masks. We're not going back to this hybrid weird schedule. And we're just going to be like, okay.
Yeah.
So I said, no, we're done. And we kind of made the decision on the fly. I basically looked at her and I said, can you handle homeschool? And she said, we'll figure it out. And we took them out of school and we've been homeschooling ever since. So it's, wasn't the way we probably thought it would go about, but we haven't regretted that decision at all moving forward.
I mean, I didn't even know this story. I just know that you guys just chose to, obviously homeschool the kids. I had no idea that this was due to just somebody just throwing up money and just being like, hey, here you go, do as I say, versus, That's wild.
That is. That just goes to show, man, if you have the enough funds and you can have that persuasion, which is sad. You know, it shouldn't be like that.
Yep.
But it is a part of the world that we do live
But
in.
also,
for
how
sure.
many things like this have happened all over the world and nobody was able to like
Exactly.
stand up on it?
Yeah. Do you have enough
That's
time in the
crazy.
day for this? We can go through
Oh,
it.
I mean, like, hey, we can do another podcast on COVID and vaccines. We can talk all about that because obviously
we absolutely can.
we definitely can, because this is just like we're just hitting up the hot topics over here. But today, like, we obviously just wanted to focus on a couple of hot things. But before we go deep into that, I wanted to focus on a little bit more to get to know you when it comes down to like your morals and your values. Like, what would you say are like the top morals that you and your family actually value?
I mean, obviously, that first one, right? The whole thing with homeschooling, right? If you believe in something, you need to stand up for it.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. So many people, and we saw this during COVID, so many people had these strong opinions and then just said, well, I don't want to, ruffle feathers.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to be ostracized, right? And MS, I believe you were still at our
We
lending
were.
partner
I
at the
was
time.
just about to say this.
Right,
It's like you
yes.
read my mind. Remember
You know.
the whole context with the
Yes.
text messaging, and you and I were
Yes.
on it, and then someone else specifically put on the longest paragraph. Pardon my French, but you know what I mean. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, the comments for that person just got automatically shut out, and it was just wild to me.
It was, and the funny thing too with the workplace side of it, as you remember, MS, was majority of us in the director position were
Against
very much against the rules trying to be put into place.
Right.
And we were essentially told very quickly, either fall in line or don't have a job.
Wow.
And
Remember
at that point,
the insurance thing that we used to get, like the discounts a year if you didn't smoke, if you went to the gym, if you did whatever.
Yep.
And then that year they changed it into, if you don't have the COVID vaccine, you're not going to get the
Yes.
discount.
No way.
Yeah, it was like
Wow.
$840, and they're like, you
Yes.
have to have the vaccine to get this discount. And I was like, well, keep the money.
Yeah.
Like, it was just a lot. And like the mask, to be honest with you, like the mask that we had to put on, like the whole
was
time
a
to go to
joke.
the bathroom. And it was crazy to me because you and I were talking about it, and we're like, somebody, like, to me the point of a vaccine, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wags, but to me the point of a vaccine is to prevent it from spreading. But if somebody
which
has,
is what we were told. Right?
correct,
That's what we were told.
We were, but half the people that actually do have the vaccine, they can still spread it, and the people that don't have the vaccine can spread it. So
Correct.
either you have it or you don't have it. We can both spread it. So what is it preventing?
Nothing at all, right? And
Yeah.
the frustrating part too is, COVID for me and my family, and I know a lot of people had loved ones that died, and I do
100%.
not
We
want to
did too.
dismiss that at all, right?
Yeah.
You and I both know MS bankers that had family members die, fathers,
100%.
mothers, things like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's not the point of what I'm trying to say at all. But again,
Same.
it comes back to personal choice on things, right? And it comes back to the fact that we got sent home within a matter of hours. I feel like we went
day.
from, hey, we might be being sent home as a company to all of a sudden, everyone get your address in because we're shipping you a laptop and you're going home immediately.
Yep.
Wow.
And it changed like that. The word on the street was that we bought, I think Dell laptops was bought out of every single laptop they had in surplus because of how many employees we had that needed instant technology.
Holy cow.
And whether that's true or not, I mean, it was actually very cool to see how fast a company can move.
Yeah, for sure.
But we had some of the best years, and I know rates were low, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But we had some of the best years of our existence at that company while we were all from home.
Yeah.
Productivity was up. People were happier because they weren't commuting. You guys know what the Phoenix commute is like, right?
Crazy.
It's not fun. It's
Yeah.
not fun ever. And when you're already working 14-hour days like we did so often, MS, when you add an hour each way on the commute because of
100%.
traffic and construction and things, we said, hey, listen, we've got great numbers. People are happier because they're home. They're actually working more because they know they can walk 4 feet to their couch when they're done. Right? I know I worked more. I was easy to jump on the computer and help out if I needed because it was
No.
right there.
A
You know?
banker would need a rate discount or whatever it was a text message on your phone. You're like, it's my day off, but I'm at home. Let me just approve it for you.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
I didn't have to interrupt time with my kids, which was normally in such short supply. My two oldest, they barely saw me when they were little.
Yeah.
I was home on the weekends, maybe one day on the weekend. I went to work before they were awake. I came home after they were in bed. My wife was essentially a single parent for the first 5-6 years that I was in the mortgage industry.
Sheesh.
You know, and so COVID was amazing. I saw my kids all day long.
Yeah.
My youngest, Merrick, when I had to go back to work finally, she bawled her eyes out because she didn't understand why Daddy was leaving, because all she knew was me being home
Yeah.
for COVID. So
Now, I will say
that
something
was-
though, Wags. Like on the marriage side, I get that with having family and seeing your family. On the single side, without having a family, that was very tough with somebody who is very outgoing.
Oh,
So I will say,
absolutely.
like for me, the hardest part were especially like the first 6 months. Like that for me drove me to the walls. Because I was so used to, obviously, like, you know how I was when I was at the office.
Mm-hmm.
I was running up and down. I was moving. I was getting, you know, you know me. So, like,
Yes,
with
absolutely.
me being waking up and then going straight to my computer, I lost my mind. Like, that was not
Yeah.
for me. Later
Yeah,
on, did it get
and-
better? Absolutely. You know, I got Teddy and, you know, going back to the office, I was okay with doing this, like, 2 days in the office and 3 days at home. Like, that was fine with this hybrid kind of deal. But at the beginning, like, that was just really rough on my side, personally.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, I can imagine. And that's, you know, it's one of those things where I don't have experience on that side. And I know it was terrible. You and I have talked about that before.
Yeah,
and I
for
talked
sure.
with other friends about that and other bankers, right? Because we oversaw teams of 15 to 25 people.
Yeah, yeah.
And half the time we played therapist as much as we did mortgage director, because
90%
we
of the
needed to
time?
know, yeah, half is right.
Are you guys licensed
please.
therapists that I don't know about, or what?
You know,
Yeah, so-
Pete, he knows Pete. We know
I do know
Pete.
Pete, yes.
You know,
I do know
Pete,
Pete, yeah.
pretty much was just like, hey, like all your friends that you're sending my way. And we're like, that's because we're all sort of screwed up in the same way, Pete. Just so you know. Like,
Yeah, we've all got the same underlying issues right
Yeah.
now, Pete. So
some
but, you know,
worse. You know.
that's rough though. That's rough. But you know, so and again, I know for some people it was incredibly hard. And if I had a crappy relationship or, you know, things like that, I can only imagine how rough that would have been too.
100%.
So that's something though where for my family and me, you know, being selfish, Emma, no offense, right?
None
But
taken.
it was such a great thing for me and my family. My wife and I got to spend more time together. I was a workaholic, you know. I still kind of am sometimes,
Yeah.
but I was bad. I was that guy that, like, I didn't need to come in, but I thought you needed me to, and I thought it would be better for my career. And so I was like, oh, I guess I'm working today, you know, like it was bad. So for me, it also kind of helped reset me and
Yeah,
get my
nice.
priorities of like, do you want your kids to know you, you know?
Yeah.
Do you want your wife to be a single mom, you know? Because of the decisions you're making, not because she actually is, but, you know, because of your decisions. And is it worth the extra time that you're putting in? And Emmis, of course, you and I know the answer to that. I'm no longer at that company. There are you, right?
Wow.
But
You know.
so in that sense, even though it was a terrible time for a lot of people, and it definitely was still weird
Yeah.
on our side, it was a great thing, and it was kind of a catalyst into me being able to handle things better as a father and as a husband, you know, within my life and my work.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes
So-
sense. So bringing it kind of back to the family dynamic and your kids being in homeschool, would you say that you and Sarah, I don't know if you guys have like talked about this and discussed in ways, but do you think your kids are, getting the education that they need being homeschooled versus public school? How do you guys kind of gauge that?
So I think the big misconception with a lot of people is you're like, today we're going to learn about this, and you just kind of run it by the, you know, the feel and the seat of your pants. And I'm sure there's some people that do that,
Yeah.
but we basically, you know, my wife being homeschooled and her mom handling most of that, we had a little bit of a leg up because we asked her, we got some opinions from different people that were doing it already. And we order curriculum, we order coursework. The company we use is The Good and the Beautiful. And they send
that sounds
everything you need at
beautiful.
the beginning of the year. And it's a classic-based curriculum, so it's all the normal stuff. And our kids just go through it lesson by lesson with us each and every single day. And then as they get older, like Rhodes is, he's probably another year away from the same company, but they will do, like, his math class will be an online video with someone else teaching it. Right.
Okay.
So it's not Sarah and I the whole time, or majority Sarah, right? But it's not her the whole time through the rest of our decision to do this, sitting there and being like, okay, now I'm going to teach you advanced algebra. Now I'm going to teach you this, so it's one of those things where it does the curriculum for us. It keeps us on the path. And then the nice thing is, if one of them needs extra help with something, we stick on it.
Nice.
We don't have to move on.
Yeah.
Right? We can stick on it as long as it takes. And then on the opposite side, if someone's crushing it, we can skip an entire 10 lessons, because if Charleston already knows it, I don't need her to do 10 more lessons of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it really, the individual side is very cool. And as they get older, and even now, just the little things like the field trips, the vacations that you can go and do, and that's, I think, that's at least what I liked as a kid. We loved the field trips.
Yeah,
we
those
loved
are
the
the
cool
best.
things.
We did.
Yeah.
But
So-
here's the thing though, Ryan, like, I think obviously, like, that's pretty great that you have like a curriculum, but like, how does it work on these field trips? Like, field trips with us would be like with all of our friends, and we're excited to get on the yellow bus, and like, you're honestly, like, you're doing that. Like, how do you do that with the kids?
Well, I'll tell you kind of a gross one that we did the other day. It was
Ew.
it was a 5-minute field trip, and it was a spur of the moment. And I had noticed, again, sorry for the gross side of it, but I had noticed there was a dead rabbit outside.
And I'm
that had
out.
been
Anatomy.
picked-
Yeah, we're
Anatomy
done.
field
No, I'm out. Me and rabbits, no. I can't.
So, I noticed there's a dead rabbit outside. I noticed it had been kind of taken apart by some sort of predator, probably one of the cats, that are out here. in the
Mr.
Mr. Whiskers is the culprit. Mr. Whiskers got
hey, they
him.
got to eat too, And so I took the kids out and I said, listen, I said, we're going to use this real quick as a little bit of a science lesson. And so I took the kids out and I just simply said, hey, I said, obviously this is a dead, bunny, not the first one we've ever seen. Right. And I said, but what do you notice about it? Just tell me about it. Just tell me what you see. Right. And of course, I've got a 6-year-old up to a 10-year-old. So everything was very different with what they were noticing.
Yeah.
But I said, okay,
I'd be like dead. That's what I see. I'm dead. I'm on the
I
floor.
I'm
passed
traumatizing you.
out.
I know. But I said, what do you know? And cats obviously being predators, right? They eat their meal much like many predators do, which they eat the vital organs first, and they kind of don't worry about the waste side of it. They don't care about the fur and the skin, right? They want the vital organs, they want the meat, they want the muscle tissue. And then there was flies on it. There was insects on it. So we talked about how flies need, need a dead animal to, lay eggs. And even though we hate flies, that's how they reproduce and their eggs come. So, as weird as it is, and as macabre as it is, and Emmis is probably gagging in the corner right now,
Yeah, she
but
is for sure.
It was a very quick, real life science lesson. And it took us 5 minutes.
Yeah.
My kids 100% remember it.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
do. You
where
know
now
what,
they know a
Wags?
little bit
I
more.
do too. I remember it too right now.
This is a core memory.
No, you know too, Emma. So
This
ready to
is
go
a
now.
science lesson for me. I skipped all the stuff every day. The days that we had to dissect the frog and things like that, I was not present in school for those days.
Oh, no.
Somewhere,
That doesn't
somehow.
surprise me.
Wait, yeah, 100%. 100%. I will die. If anything is dead in front of me, I'm dead. I'm on the ground. You got to pick me up. Like, that's not happening. It's not.
Emmis, my family is a very outdoor family. We camp. I hunt.
I like
my kids
outdoor.
have
I
been
can
around.
glam.
Yeah, but you don't camp like we. You glamp. Well, you don't camp.
I can
Emmis,
camp.
okay?
I can
He's
do
a
camping.
legit camper. He's like a shovel, and you go
Yes.
far in the.
Yes,
Well, I can do
absolutely.
it.
Like,
I can do it as long
go
as I don't have to
away
have
from
bugs.
Everybody.
As long
know?
as you don't have bugs, girl, that's camping.
Okay, like
She's a
you're
glamper.
getting too much
Guys,
into the
she's a
detail.
glamper. She's a
you know?
glamper.
We had another science lesson while camping one time, Emmis, about the tarantula that we found in our camp.
Oh,
you know,
sweet Jesus.
there's-
That's when I'm out.
Yeah,
That's when I'm
done
out. That's when
again,
I'm
like-
respectfully in the car. We're going.
If a spider is going to come next to me, I'm done. I'd rather have a snake than a spider, honestly.
Really?
I would too. I don't
Oh,
like
yeah,
spiders. I'll be
100%.
the first to tell you.
Ugh,
I do
just-
not like
I
them.
don't
But
know.
it was the first one we'd ever seen in Arizona, and you make it a learning moment. But that's not just a homeschool thing, right? That's something
Yeah.
that's something that parents, should be, in my opinion, right? You're directly responsible for your kids and their learning and experiences and things of that nature. So if I have the ability to see it, and I was an animal nerd as a kid, right? So I'm going to remind them that 3 facts that I remember about tarantulas as a kid. Yeah. And we're going to watch it and we're going to observe it, because why not, right? Yeah. It's this beautiful world we live in, and I'm going to take the experiences that I can get. And again, like I said, will that ever help my children in life, to know random facts about a tarantula? I don't know. But at their current ages, will they remember it and will they enjoy it and tell all their friends? Yeah. And they're not solving, complex equations at this age. It's about making it fun and making it where they want to continue to learn.
Now, speaking of friends, Wax, because listen, I'm going to come at you for this one, okay? And
go ahead.
Here's the weird thing, or whatever people think these days, right? Or whatever they used to think. They used to always think that kids that were homeschooled are weirdos. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Absolutely.
100%, right? And listen, I grew up in Europe, as you already know. We grew up in public schools. Like, that was our thing. Like, all of us had schooling. Like, if you lived in a farm, far away from civilization, then you might have been homeschooled in Europe. But that was it. Like, everybody went to school. So anytime we ran into somebody that was homeschooled, you're just do you have how do you communicate? Do you have any friends? Okay.
You're like, hello.
So, I'm not trying to be weird then. It's not like they're aliens, but I'm just putting it out there.
What do you think, Ryan? Do you think your kids are gonna have any type of struggle when it comes to being socially interactive with other kids their age, growing up now?
So, I mean, I'm not the most normal person in the world. Amos would probably agree, right? So I don't know if maybe this even matters.
This is bad start, is what you're saying. This is why we're friends, but go on.
Right, but, so for instance, when I first met my wife and we were dating and everything, and I found out she was a homeschool kid, oh man, I didn't let her live it down. I was like, so did you make friends with the cat? Did you talk to anybody ever? Did you ever come out of your house? I was mean, right?
She has to have had an imaginary friend.
Absolutely. And because to your point, I was always in school.
Sarah, I love you. I just want to say it right now. Sarah, I love you. I did not think this things of you. Wags did, not me.
They're talking crap about my imaginary friends and my best friend cat.
I know. I'm like, what was your imaginary friend's name? Exactly, Buffy, right? So I was ruthless with her on it. And it was a worry for me because I'd never gone through it. To your point, Emma, I didn't know homeschooled kids. We didn't have that in Ames when I grew up. You went to school. That was it.
Yeah.
And so, I was a little worried about it. But again, the things that you can have really weird kids. And who knows, if people think my kids are weird, go for it, right? But you can have really weird kids that are in public school. You can have really weird kids that are homeschooled, right? And I think a lot of that comes down to more of, one, the parents, right? Traditionally, what I've found is if the parents are a little weird, not maybe a bad thing, right? But if they're a little weird, their kids are usually a little weird, right? So again, I'm probably a little weird. So maybe my kids are a little screwed one way or the other, right? But we take them, we leave the house, to the joke I used to make with life. They go to sports and they play with their friends. And, when we go out to eat, and from a very young age, it, again, not a homeschooled thing or a public school thing, but we make them order their food at a restaurant from a very young age and look the waitress or the waiter in the eye and say please and thank you.
Beautiful.
And when people talk to them, if I'm in Home Depot grabbing something and I've got one of the kids with me and someone says, oh, are you helping Daddy today? I don't just go, oh, he's shy. I say, hey, he asked you a question. You going to answer?
I love that.
And so it's, but I love to think, and I don't know, but I love to think that I would do the same if they were in public school too. So again, it comes back to you as a parent. Do you interact with your child on a daily basis? Do you talk to them like another human being? Do you model what they should be living and learning, right? And then do you also put them in other things, right? So sports were always a big one for our kids, and they still are. And I was joking with Sarah the other night, actually. I said, I've watched how Rhodes, my oldest especially, interacts with some of these kids at football. I'm like, they're just as weird as he is, and they are, the public school kids. So
You're like, so we're not doing too bad. We're not doing too bad.
We're doing great,
So,
Sarah. He's
I
weirder.
think for right
The kids are
now-
weirder than Rhodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for right now we're good on that. But again, I think really that comes down to the parent as a whole. And again, your job as a parent is to prepare your children for the rest of their life. And I know a ton of public school kids and that can't look an adult in the eye, and tell them their age and their name,
That's
And I
strange.
know
It's-
a ton of
it's
public
scary.
school kids that are incredible at it, and better than my children at, so
Yeah.
I think it's just the key is to give them a well-rounded existence as a whole.
I think it's fair
Right.
to say that my kids will have RBF, huh?
100%.
Yeah, I think
100%.
that's a no-brainer on that part for sure.
As soon as they come across somebody, face.
But she's livid.
Nobody will mess with them though, Ennis. That's the key.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
They'll be like, ooh.
100%. Nobody will. My kids will not be bullied, nor would they be bullies. I think that
Yeah, we
I will
gotta
teach
find
my,
that middle ground.
my children to stand up for things, 100% sure.
Good.
So we have them in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. All the
wow,
kids are in
let's go.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Heck yeah.
And one of the higher belts teaches at a different school. And we were as adults, we were getting ready for class for the adult class, and he was just talking. He's like, I do this noon on Tuesday homeschool kids class in the other school, and he's like, these kids, he's like, I don't know how to communicate with them. And so he didn't know that my kids were homeschooled, so I kind of pressed him. I'm like, hey, what do you mean,
Yeah.
And he's like, they won't look me in the eye. They won't
way.
acknowledge that I'm talking. He's
Wow.
like, they are, he goes, they're homeschoolers, but it's still out there, right? Because again, as for whatever reason, a lot of these parents that maybe are a little more socially awkward, right? A lot of these adults that are more socially awkward, if they were homeschooled especially, and a lot of times there's a religious component into it, right? Which we don't need to go into, but a lot of times these groups that traditionally homeschooled, they are kind of awkward all throughout their life, right? It doesn't change when they get into adulthood. And because of it, they mold their kid, I feel like, into a version of themselves, which makes sense.
That is true.
But
yeah.
that version is an awkward little person, right? And if you're the type of person that you're scared to pick up the phone and order a pizza because you don't want to interact with another person, your kids are going to emulate that.
Correct.
Okay,
Right?
I just
Whereas
made a
if you
face
grew up
right,
in a loud,
right now. Why,
a loud,
why would they
abrasive
not
household
call
with me as
somebody?
a dad, they're not going to be too worried about saying hi to somebody.
That's strange
so,
to me.
And I told him, I said, hey, I said, my kids are homeschooled, right? He goes,
Oh.
shut up. I was like, no. I said, they're homeschooled. He goes, they're not these homeschool kids. He goes, I never would have known. And I said, well, that's either a compliment or a bad. I said, I don't know which one that is, but so I think for the most part, I think we're doing okay. But again, I think that stigma is still there for a reason, because I think it still does exist for a lot of people. I think they are kind of the socially awkward adults that are producing socially awkward children.
I mean, I just wanted to ask on it. I wanted to push a little bit and figure it out. 'Cause
Hey,
that's
push
what we
away,
thought about it,
Yeah, and to your point, Ryan, I think there's truth to it, to where you are a product of your environment, and if your parents are kind of a little quirky and awkward, you're therefore going to emulate that. So also wrapping it into being homeschooled, I think also kind of just expedites that part. But a really cool fact, because we went ahead and just did some research just on this topic, is a study using the social skills rating scale found that homeschooled children scored above average in overall social skills, with a mean score of 63.143 compared to 55.125 for public school children. So kind of to your point, I honestly, when I read this, I was like, no way. But yeah, you're a product of your environment. And I do think there are some homeschooled students that do excel in social skills and vice versa. So that was super interesting. I was a little dumbfounded when I found that. I was like, no way. I would totally, with the stigma I had in my head, I was like, there ain't no way. They're just talking to their imaginary friends and their neighborhood cat. And that's all that they're doing. But super interesting in that aspect. Were you surprised by that, or did it make
I think again, we've been in it for a couple years now, right? So it doesn't feel that new anymore to us. But I think there's a big push of people our age, right? That for one reason or another have decided to homeschool in the last couple of years. And we had that image of the awkward homeschool kid in our heads, and we said, we're not going to allow this to happen to our kids. We're educating them at home, but like, by golly, they're going to be normal, whatever normal
Buy
is.
everything, please.
And
Yeah.
yes, so I think that we're kind of really pushing, our generation is really kind of pushing that change.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to see too, because as the kids get older and as they have their different likes and things, I remember being frustrated in school because maybe I really liked X as a subject, but I never got to research it and do my projects on it. I had to do what the teacher thought was cool. So that's kind of some of the stuff that I'm really looking forward to, is being able to say, hey, you love this. Let's gear this English project towards it, whatever that looks like. Or, hey, why do we have to spend 8 weeks on U.S. history if you really like World War I? Let's spend more time on World War I, right?
Yeah.
Not that we're going to miss anything, but really cater it to the kids. And like I said, it's been great because Rhodes has had a little bit harder time reading than Charleston, and it frustrates him. But we don't have to move on because the rest of the class is ready. We're just handling business for him. And then she can move forward as she wants, right? So that customization side, I don't know if we could ever go back from that. I really don't.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. I think it's cool that you get to customize it, like you said, for each child's needs, and then they're progressing when they're ready to progress. Because I do think, to a certain extent, in the public school system, that's not happening. So kids are progressing in certain areas and they're digressing in others. And they're just too far ahead in certain aspects to where it's too late to now go back and recoup what was lost in other subjects. So that is a really good point in that. So we talked a little bit about your kids being homeschooled and what that entails. Let's talk a little bit more about your family's views on safety. What would you say are like the top values as a father that you and your wife share, or you think individually, in regards to just protecting your family in today's world?
So, as you guys probably can figure out already, just with what we've talked about, right? I'm kind of more of an old school mentality, right? I believe everybody's obviously responsible for each other.
You are? I have known you
shocked.
for so long, and I did not know this.
Pick yourself up off the floor from your shock. I know we'll get through it, right? But the whole family is involved, of course, in looking out for each other, right? But at the same time, my role as a dad my major role is to protect my family. That's all there is to it. And people can disagree with me, whatever. It's not a stance I'm moving on ever. And now, does that mean that I am the toughest son of a bitch that's ever existed, and I'm a trained cage fighter, and I can do all these
black belt jiu-jitsu,
right?
Yeah,
right. I'm not Arnold from the '80s movies that I loved so much as a kid, but it's just simple things, right? I'm looking out for my wife. I'm looking out for my children, right? And again, more just a common sense side of things. I'm not allowing them to be put in a situation where it's going to be dangerous. And that's very different from what it was growing up for me. I remember jumping on my bike at 11, 12 years old, riding around the neighborhood, and my parents, who were very strict, if I'm being quite honest, they weren't really that worried about it. Even though they were very strict parents, I wouldn't let my 12-year-old ride around the neighborhood on a bike in this day and age, as an example. So it's frustrating as a parent raising children that things have changed in a negative way, right? But that's where I just take on my role more seriously. So, if we're home and we're asleep, and somebody breaks in, I'm there, right? Yeah. That's the one. And with that, obviously I'm a big gun proponent. So that's where guns come into the household. That's where items to, defensively help my family come into the picture, right? But it's little things like, hey, when we're home, kids, we lock the door.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not because we're scared of the boogeyman, right? I'm not trying to instill fear in my children. It's just, we lock the door. No different than we flush the toilet when we go to the bathroom, right? Like,
some kids don't know that. Some kids do not.
Sometimes can be a rough one, right?
It's great.
But, so little things like that, again, just kind of peppering little things into their life that they know. And, if we have I'm scared, I don't want to go to bed, I'm scared type of situation. One of the things that I'm so proud of is I always say, daddy's here, mommy's here, your brother's down the hall, your sister's right here. Like, Like, we're never going to let anything happen to you. And, kids, they don't care about that. They're just like, but I'm scared right now.
Yeah.
But, you can kind of see it. It calms them a little bit, like, yep, mommy and daddy, their job is to make sure nothing ever happens to me. Right. And I think that's where it starts, because if my kids have families of their own one day, I hope that my daughters look for somebody that is a protector, right, to them. And I hope my son wants to be a protector. And I hope they hold each other to that. And I hope they see that enough growing up that it's just kind of that constant subconscious drip in the back of their head, that it's not like, I've got to really think about this and do this. It's just, I just observe my life, and I look around, and I just see my surroundings, and I lock my front door, because why not? What does it hurt? And even as simple as I put on my seatbelt, because why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
It's never been you have to put on your seatbelt, right? It's the law. No, I don't care about that. It's because, hey, if we get in a car crash, do you want to live or do you want to die? Or, what's your best option? And I wear my seatbelt. I do it by example, and it's something that will continue to develop as they get older. Obviously, there will be more things we can go into. But at just this young of an age, it's like, hey, you watch out for your brothers and sisters. You watch out for your friends, right? They should watch out for you. And then above all else, mommy and daddy are the ones that's our job, right? We're the one tasked with doing that. You don't have to be a little vigilante kid. You don't have to be looking for all the bad stuff. Just be a kid, enjoy, but have some common sense with some things as well.
No, that's good.
I mean, here's the thing, like, obviously I'm going to put out what a lot of people are thinking on it. And you get people from all over the world being like, guns are violence, and like, you shouldn't have them. And this is crazy why people can get them so easy. And, there's certain things that are just like, yeah, there should be certain regulations on it, but which personally, I don't think we do enough searching on who should get a gun, if that makes sense. On my side, that's how I think. Like, I think there should be some like a mental test that happens out there for people to figure out like if you are mentally capable to obtain a gun, to keep a gun, right? But again, like, I'm going to talk about a little bit on the European side of things, right? The EU, the nations you cannot have a gun. Like, that is, unless you actually go and there has to be certain regulations. So certain countries, you have to be part of, the government to obtain a gun and to have it with you to carry out, right? If you have one at home, there's other regulations that you have to carry a specific type of gun. You can't have any kind of gun that you feel like having. It's just a specific type that you can only have as a citizen, right? And in America, obviously we have different regulations for each state, because every state is a little bit different, right? Like in Illinois is different how to have a gun, and Arizona is completely different on it. Obviously you're talking about being a protector and you're protecting your family and taking care of that, but a lot of these shootings that have happened in schools or whatever it may be, some of the kids that were bullied or whatever it may be, they went home, grabbed a gun from their parents' house and just went shooting, right? Yeah. And now you're just like, how did that happen? So like, where do you stand on that? Like, what do you think? Like, what are your thought processes on this? Because obviously everybody's going to be a little bit different, but like, best way that I can ask it, I guess, is how do you protect so your children are not going next to the guns? Like, do you talk to them about gun safety? Do you talk to them about things that they are not allowed to touch? Like, how do you go about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many different ways we can go on this topic, right? It could be 3 more podcasts and we'd still never get to the end of it. But I think first and foremost, the biggest thing is obviously responsibility of the parents. But even before that, I think we all need to recognize that, obviously, as someone who's into guns and somebody who has been around guns for a very, very long time, and they're a part of my life and my family, and our dynamic. Obviously, I have a lot of like-minded friends where that's very similar for them. And this is a conversation we have all the time. And not a single gun owner wants there to be gun violence. Not a single one, right? Our goal is that nobody ever gets hurt by a gun, and unfortunately people do, right? They do. Yeah. And so it's, to your point, then it's, okay, how do we manage it so that people who shouldn't have access, right, to your point, namely kids, right? How do we make sure that kids don't have it?
Yeah.
So first and foremost, and this might get me some hate, right? But you can't legislate and make laws for morals. Okay? You can't make people moral by putting a law on the books.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Because it's already illegal to murder, right? People still do it.
Yeah.
Okay? It says in the Bible, if you're a God-fearing person, you believe in any religion of most religions have something saying, don't harm others, right? People still do it, right? So we know we can't just sign a law into place. There's thousands of gun laws in place already.
Yeah.
And they don't stop anybody who wants to do something bad with a gun.
No, not at all.
So everybody says, well, let's just ban them. When was the last time banning anything actually stopped it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it made it more desirable. It made it more of an
always
item.
does.
And also, too, to your point, Ryan, I think where you're getting, like, the people that are doing the violence in regards to gun violence, they didn't obtain that weapon legally. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, they're
didn't
not
go
doing
through
the
the
right
process
way.
that I did.
Correct. So
Right. Now, the other issue then says, so if we take away the criminals, right, we take them away and we say, okay, how do we only focus on, Emma, I think you said, a lot of these school shooting kids, they get the gun, they take the gun from the parents' house, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately they do,
Yeah.
right? If I had to bet, I would bet that in most situations, the gun is not properly stored.
Yeah.
And I would bet that the child has little to no knowledge on firearms other than what they've gathered from movies, video games, and maybe some very brief interaction with their parents with it. So what I mean by that is most kids that I know that grow up in a gun family, mine included, there's no mystique about guns. They're no different than me having a fork on the table for dinner because it's a tool to eat. There's no different from me having a circular saw out in the garage that we use to cut wood for a project that we're working on, right? It's no different other than we know that its an intended purpose is obviously much more dangerous. Okay? But my kids have been around guns since before they could walk. There's pictures of roads with me shooting in Georgia, because that's where he was born and where we lived, right, when he could barely walk yet, right? And he would sit there. There's a picture of him with earmuffs on, and he's sitting in the back of the truck with Sarah, and we're shooting with some of Sarah's cousins, and he's just eating a snack and just completely unfazed with it. All my kids shoot, right? But at the same time, I don't go say, hey, here's the key to my safe. Go take the gun and go shoot whenever you want, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first key is, I think as a parent, you have to get the mystique away from the guns,
Yeah.
right? Kids are intrigued by them, especially if they don't know really what they're about. You see them in a movie, you see them in a show, you're like, this kind of looks cool. I don't know what it is, right? Kids are intrigued by the weirdest things, let alone guns. And so, I think a lot of the issue for a lot of gun accidents, and this doesn't solve the school shooting thing, but for a lot of gun accidents in homes, kids are just like, oh my gosh, what is this? I want to pick it up. I want to see what it is, right? And then unfortunately, usually there's some sort of accidental shooting.
Yeah.
And that's terrible, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we come to the second phase. Your kids need to understand what firearms are. They need to understand firearm safety from a very young age. And you need to make sure that they have access to them in a safe way. So what I mean by that is we have a rule in the family that if one of the kids says, Dad, I want to see one of your guns, if I can, in that moment, obviously not if I'm on a call or something like that, but if I can in that moment, I will take them. I will ask them which gun they want to see. I will go through with them how to unload it, how to make sure it's unloaded. We go through the rules of gun safety every single time, right? And then I'll let them hold it. I'll let them point it in a safe direction, in a way that we've taught how to shoot, correct shooting stance, things like that, right? But if they want to see one, I want them to know that all they have to ask is mommy and daddy, right? There's never oh, that's daddy's gun and nobody touches it. I remember growing up with family, friends like that. And it was, hey, your dad has a gun in the house. Don't go looking for it and don't touch it if you see it. Well, what does every kid want to do? They're like, what?
I can't have it.
It's like Christmas presents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, don't go looking for your Christmas presents, kids, right?
Yeah.
What do you want to do? You want to go look for the Christmas presents. So obviously that's not something I thought up on my own. I stole that from, other gun owning individuals over the years. But my kids, again, not that I'm going to, but I could lay all my guns out on the kitchen table for days and my kids wouldn't touch any of them without asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Because they know all they have to do is ask.
I grew up with a gun. So like my grandpa
Yeah.
had a gun, and I remember as a kid sitting in the dining room table, and he would just, obviously clean it, and I would just love to put like the little bullets in there. Like, so I like grew up with it. Now, obviously when like democracy came in, because obviously we were commies, back in the day, just throwing it out there.
Yes, you were. That's true. Yeah.
just throwing it out there.
Not
But,
you, of course, Emma. Not you.
when things changed and they removed my grandpa's gun, they requested it to be delivered, like to take it back, right? So they took my grandpa's gun and stuff, and obviously you were not allowed to have it in your families and whatever, other things that happened during that time. But so I grew up as a kid with having a gun, but I never were to be like, let me see it, or, had this curiosity on it, because I used to see my grandpa like clean it. I used to be like, okay, that's so cool. And I still like remember like the colors of the bullets and stuff. Like I remember all of that, but it was never like one of those things that I was just like, I must find it, or I must, do that. So I understand where you're coming from. And, like, I do agree with you. Like I own a gun right now. Obviously, I think it's very important to be protected in this day and age, especially like, as a female, especially in Arizona. There's certain times like you have situations that you're just like, that's very creepy. And I don't know about you, but like, I don't know about you, Beth. A lot of places now you go shopping and there's random people following you into the store. Like,
yeah, it's a scary time in the world.
Very much so.
For sure.
So I believe in that. My only thought process behind it is, what can we do to have more regulations with mentally ill people who end up getting guns and who end up killing people? Like, I know like we have the amendments that you have to go by and you should bear arms and things like that for the protection of things. But what is it that we can do?
So let me clarify too one point, right? Just because I fully am comfortable, and I'm kind of a control freak, right? Pete would tell you the same. I'm definitely a control freak, right? That's one of my issues.
Yeah.
Is just because my kids won't touch guns doesn't mean I leave them out.
Yeah.
Right? My guns are still all locked up, right? The only one that isn't locked up on a daily basis is the one that's on my person, right? Yeah. And when it's not on my person anymore, it goes to a spot where they can't access it, right? And it's usually while they're asleep, right? Because I only take it off when I'm asleep. So again, just because I believe my children are going to make the right choice, I still remember that they're children and they make impulsive decisions. And so I still take away the last variable, which is you still just don't have access to it no matter what, right? So that's where the responsibility of these parents in a lot of the situations came in. And it makes me wonder, to your point, right? Did they do like I did, but they forgot the last point, which is you still need to take possibly impulsive bad decisions away from kids, right? Or did they, on the flip side, they bought a gun one time, they've shot it a few times, they thought they needed it, they threw it in the closet and said, my kid doesn't even know it's there. Right? They're never going to go looking for it. They'd never do that sort of thing, And, we can get into the whole issue of mental illness, like you said, and irresponsible parents. And I know I hid things from my parents as a kid, right? I'm sure we all did, right? None of us are these perfect little angels, and we hid things from our parents.
I don't know about you, but I am, okay?
Well, yes, you definitely.
Okay, girl. Okay.
But my parents most of the time had a pretty good idea of what I was doing before I did it.
Yeah.
Right? And I watch my kids and I watch them sometimes try and be sneaky and things. And I'm just like, man, you're terrible at this. Like, you're terrible. I knew what you were doing 5 minutes ago, right? Before you even, So I think to myself, the parent, they're probably not super involved with their kids.
Yeah.
Right? And I hate to make that grand of a statement, but if your kid is going to go do something as wild and as irresponsible for other human life as I'm going to take a firearm and I'm going to shoot people for whatever reason, there's probably been other signs at some point.
Yeah.
Right? Now, again, if there wasn't, and I'm completely wrong, if the gun's locked up and you're the only person who has knowledge of how to get it, you've still taken that away because these kids can't go to a gun store and get them. Right? Yeah. Which leads then the third side is they got it illegally. Probably not. Illegal guns, from what I understand and from what my law enforcement buddies have told me, are very expensive on the street, right? I could barely afford a movie ticket when I was in high school, so let alone, going and buying some illegal gun from somebody. So I think a lot of it is negligence of the parents, which is sad. But at the same time, to your point, we have to know our kids, right? And we have to talk about the mental health issues because, as we've seen, those have spiked in children. They've spiked terribly in children. And COVID didn't help that at all.
No, not at all.
You get into, sorry, I'm going to put my boomer hat on, as I'm almost 38 years old. But social media is, I think, one of the most destructive things in our children's lives.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. People can hate on me for it. They can say whatever. I don't care. Right? I think it's an amazing tool for keeping in touch with people. I think it's an amazing tool. Just like all of our technology, I think there's great, great, great benefits to it. But I think for children, if you look at the effects that it's had on them, it has been horribly detrimental. Yeah. And with that, you've also seen the sharp spike in mental issues with children, depression, thoughts of suicide, things like that. I didn't come from a great upbringing. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. Emma, I obviously know your background. Beth, I don't know much of yours, right? But never at one point in my life did I ever think to myself, I think I need to go shoot people or I need to end my own life.
No.
Yeah. 100%. And also, too, to your point, and then this is how I grew up. I grew up in a gun household. So my dad from the get-go never made it a taboo thing. We knew that it was something you don't mess with. And as we got older, he showed us, once we were old enough, how to properly hold a gun safety, make sure it's empty, check it, all that, how to properly store a gun, never point it at someone. This is something that takes someone's life. It's not something that's just fun that you throw around. So having that background, I think, was super crucial to your point, and also having parents that are present and aware and take those, extra steps to proceed in caution is what ultimately makes the difference between having a child that can potentially be a danger to society or not. And it sounds like from how you're doing it and how my father did, I knew that wasn't something you play with. I knew it was a tool that can be used to protect yourself, but you should not use it just on a whim, or not even an idea of taking it to school. It was only for safety purposes. And if that didn't pertain to what's going on, you don't touch it. You don't, it's not something used. But I think it's true that with the kids that have been in just situations of, school shootings, other shootings just in the public, it comes down to a bigger cause, and maybe that is mental issues, but it stemmed from something and it was never taken care of. So then therefore they were given a tool for them to act on that, and it's unfortunate that the images of guns are associated in that way, when in reality, there's a way bigger issue we need to solve, and just taking them away isn't the answer. That's just taking away the tool to protect yourself and your family if needed, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. And I do think, obviously, we've been going at this for a full hour, and we definitely need to do a second episode on this. I think it's very important because we do have a lot to talk about that we, we had a list on that we need to go over, and there's definitely stories that I want to bring in, and for us to obviously go back and forth and take a look at how certain things have happened versus when it comes to stronger families that are teaching their children on how to use guns and all of that. So I think we definitely need to do a second episode on this. What do you think, Ryan? Would you join us again for another episode of the podcast?
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we love this.
Better. I don't have a better use of an hour if it even helps one person figure things out in their life, right? Not that I'm some super special people that anybody needs to listen to, right? But if someone hears and goes, that I've never thought of it that way, that might help, right? Yeah. Or holy cow, my kids are really good with guns, but I really should lock them up, right?
Yeah.
That's something that we all need reminders of, and that's stuff that, Beth, like you were saying with gun safety, right? Every time you still remind them of it. You still remind them of it, right? You don't ever stop learning and talking about it. So, I think we as adults still need that type of thing as well.
Agreed.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you just taking the time to chat with us, and hopefully for our listeners, this provoked just some thought in your head. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but just hearing it out is always a good thing to take. But again, thank you, Ryan. We really appreciate your time. We'll definitely do a part 2.
We have to do a part 2.
Yeah, we just
we also need to go back to having our listeners, because we're going to get some people who are just completely on the opposite spectrum
Yeah.
of things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we want to have these conversations. We want to bring things to light, and that's the reason for our podcast.
Yeah.
Our podcast is not here for just, to talk about, social media and things like that, or just fun things out there. We want to bring in things to light, things that like families do relate with, people like casual people like us, not somebody that's going to be like, a Hollywood star or whatnot, but people that want to talk about these real things and touch on the topics that are very, very hard for people to deal with. And this is a place that like you can feel comfortable to share things. There's no such thing as like the wrong way or the right way, but it's obviously just, bringing ideas and thoughts to common folks, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. Normal people just talking about daily life.
Exactly.
Pretty
Exactly. And that's our goal. So we really appreciate your time, Ryan. Thank you so much. Thank you, listeners, for checking in with us and just listening to our podcast. We really appreciate it. Any feedback you have, always comment. Let us know. We'd love to see and hear what you think.
See you next time, guys.